people currently live with Alzheimer's and related dementias. There are another 7,600 caregivers who are caring for loved ones with Alzheimer's. Whereas in 2020, COVID-19 contributed to a 17% increase in Alzheimer's and dementia deaths. Whereas fewer than 1 in 5 Americans are familiar with mild cognitive impairment, MCI, which can be an early stage of Alzheimer's. 90% of physicians say it is important to diagnose MCI due to Alzheimer's, but over half say that they are not fully comfortable making that diagnosis. Whereas during June, the Alzheimer's Association invites Humboldt County residents to participate in the longest day on June 21st, held annually on the summer solstice. The longest day invites participants to fight the darkness of Alzheimer's through a fundraising activity of their choice or by wearing purple. Therefore, we, the City Council of Rio Dell, California, do hereby proclaim June Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month. The council thanks the Alzheimer's Association for providing services to people and families coping with dementia. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm John Schmidt and my wife Carrie, and we volunteer with the Alzheimer's Association. And if I could just read this short statement.
Oh, absolutely.
The Alzheimer's Association would like to thank the council for proclaiming June as Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month. We would like to encourage the council to wear purple during one of your June meetings to help raise awareness of Alzheimer's and honor those affected by the disease. We also want to thank you for your past support by hosting a promise garden. We set our little hay bales and flowers up there on the corner. We appreciate you letting us do that. And that thereby helps to raise community awareness of our walk to end Alzheimer's, which takes place in October of each year. It'll be October 8th this year. And we appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Public presentations. This is the time for persons who wish to address the council on any matter not on this agenda and over which the council has jurisdiction. As such, a dialogue with council or staff is not allowed under the Ralph O. Brown Act. Items requiring council actions not listed on this agenda may be placed on the next regular agenda for consideration if the council directs, unless a finding is made by at least 2/3 of the council that the item came up after the agenda was posted and is of an urgency nature requiring immediate action. Please limit comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. Are there any emails or?
We did receive one comment.
Thank you.
In your newsletter the last couple of months, you printed about vehicles parking on the roadway in the opposite direction to which the traffic normally moves. Apparently it's okay for some, but not for all. We say you need to remind the police of the code section 22502. There's a blue house on the north side of Peter Street across from the Trader Park that has a blue pickup, a white SUV, a white car, and sometimes a sheriff's SUV, plus some of their company at times. We guess it's okay because of who they are. Not so. We will be watching to see if this matter is taken care of. Plus, we will keep an eye on it out for the rest of the city. The police drive down Peter Street all the time, so we know they see it. You need to take care of this matter. We will be watching. Signed, citizens of Peter Street.
Thank you. And are there any hands raised? We will move to the consent calendar. Are there any items that council member cares to pull from the consent calendar? Anyone in the audience care to remove anything from the consent calendar? Seeing no, hand raised, emails. Hearing and seeing nothing, I would ask for a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second? No second. We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion carries 4-0. just before, because I don't want to run up against the time, I'm just gonna say, anyone who's watching, please go vote. That's what we can do as citizens. Okay, now, I'll move on to the city manager report and staff update.
Thank you, Mayor Garnes and members of the council.
That's page 38, I'm sorry.
And that is on 38. The next meeting will have an update from city engineer GHD. We will also have a presentation from Caltrans over the bridge replacement, the northbound bridge, otherwise known as the Muffet Bridge. And that presentation from Caltrans, they're also looking for input on ways to improve the project aesthetically. So we don't have any detailed plans or anything like that at this point in time, but as soon as we get them in the presentation, we will forward them on individually with council members. And that'll hopefully provide enough time for the council to ponder different ideas and concepts for the location. I don't know whether they'll be able to follow through on those, but they did invite them. And then in other infrastructure related news, if you haven't been down to Riverside recently, we encourage you to drive on down that way. There's been quite a bit of pavement work underway. Past couple of weeks have been filled with preparation work for that particular project. And they are working on the triangle, and I believe hopefully finishing up for Andy today. And then they'll be on to the hill here to do some work on Orchard and Cherry. With that, I will go ahead and return to the council, see if there's any questions or comments from to staff, and welcome any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor Garnes. I jogged down Riverside last Friday and rode my bike on it on Sunday, and nice job. It's a tremendous improvement. Thank you.
Councilmember Carter?
I've also gotten compliments on Riverside Drive. Thank you.
And Councilmember Wilson?
I have no questions.
Okay, thank you. And I have no questions. Thank you. It looks great. I'm excited about just the roads getting done in general, and I'm just really excited about it. It's really nice to feel like we're accomplishing something. Now, we have a slight adjustment to our agenda. Oh, I'm sorry. Does anyone else have a question for the staff on the staff report? Are there any hands raised or emails? We're going to move on. We have an adjustment to the agenda. We're going to move the budget to the item number 1 and the climate action plan to item number 2. So the budget, where am I? Page 58, 58 in our packet. Daryl.
Go ahead.
So we presented the recommended budget to the council on May 17th. At that time, there were no recommended changes by the council. The staff has made 3 changes since that time to the budget. One of them is to add the purchase of a replacement public works truck that was, I think we actually put this in 2021 and didn't get it, and then in 21, 22, and weren't able to get it, and now we're gonna put it in 22, 23. It's been challenging to get this truck. So it's really not any additional funds being spent, it's just rebudgeting already, an already approved purchase. And then we did add $10,000 to the police budget for a traffic study based on comments from the priority session. And then there was a $3,560 adjustment having to do with expense transfers that was inadvertently left off of the original budget. And so now the proposed budget totals $8,953,904. And this is the slide basically showing by activity, how the budget is allocated, with capital grant projects being the largest one. As I discussed at the last meeting, the budget has gone up 56%, and that is primarily due to the fact that we have a large number of grants that are included in the recommended budget. Police is the next largest expenditure, and then city capital projects, and then we have sewer, water, debt, and all of the remaining departments. And then here is how the revenue is allocated. There's been no changes to the revenue estimates since the recommended budget was presented on the 17th. Grants make up the largest portion of the revenue, and they are equal to the expenditures. All of the grants that we had were 100%, no local match. And then the general fund comes in at about 30%, and then we have sewer and water, and then that remaining smaller funds. And then the general fund expenses, about 50% of the budget is police, 40. I'm just gonna say about 50 because I can't actually quite read that. Even with my glasses on, I must be. And then capital projects make up a little bit over 25%, and then the city manager department, not the city manager, and the finance department comes in after that. And then we go to the next one. And this slide shows general fund revenue, major revenue sources for since 2016-17, with the blue being in lieu BLF, the red being retail sales tax, which includes both Bradley Burns and Measure JU. And then the property tax is purple, and then the cannabis is green. And you can see the kind of had the cannabis has gone up and gone down, and there's a very slight reduction estimated for revenues for 22-23 from 21-22. And then this is the capital projects, and basically this slide's similar to the one that we had last time, except that it now has the additional truck on it. And I believe we go to the last one that just says if there's any questions. And the recommendation is that the council approve resolution 1539-2020, adopting the fiscal year 22-23 operating and capital budget and position allocation table, which is included in the resolution. Or provide additional direction and instruct staff to return on June 21st with the adoption of the budget.
Run it back here. Okay. Councilmember Wilson?
That looks good.
Thank you. Councilmember Carter?
Also no questions. Once again, as always, thank you, Cheryl. Everything else great.
And Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Well done, Finance Department.
All around well done, Finance Department, and we thank you for everything you've done. Is there a motion to approve resolution? Are there any questions? Any hands raised and emails? Questions? No, okay. So is there a motion to approve resolution 1539-2022, adopting fiscal year 2022-23 operating and capital budget and position allocation table?
So moved.
You have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion and a second? Vote. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you. Thank you, Cheryl.
I'm going to excuse myself.
Absolutely. Good luck. Yay.
Thank you for speeding it forward.
Yeah, no worries.
Good luck.
Yeah. Now we will move on to the climate action plan, page 44 in our packets.
Mayor Garnes, members of the council, this is an update on the regional climate action plan. As council is aware, staff, the city has been working with the other 6 incorporated cities in the county, along with the county of Humboldt, in preparing a regional climate action plan since late 2018. We're at the point now where we're going to use the public draft of the climate action plan. And the next step in the process is to actually begin the EIR process. The board had a presentation today from Michael Richardson, who's going to be providing a brief presentation to us as well on where we're at. And with that, if Michael is available and ready, we can move right on to Mr. Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Are you there?
Yes, I am. I'm attending by phone. Is there a way that I can attend using my computer, or should I just go for it using my phone?
It's up to you. It's up to you. There is,
The PowerPoint is loaded and up.
Okay, well, yeah, if somebody could just help me advance the slides, I can just do it by phone then.
We got it, just call it out.
Okay. So yeah, as Kevin mentioned, we are pivoting from developing the climate action plan to evaluating the environmental impacts of it. And frankly, it's not a perfect document, and we are, what we're trying to do is to, through the EIR process, tune it up to fit everybody's needs. And so what we're asking jurisdictions to do is to give us permission to do that, essentially, to take the document that's been drafted and consider that the project that will be evaluated in the environmental impact report, and to accommodate changes to it through the alternatives analysis in the environmental impact report. So if you could go to the second slide, that would be great. The purpose of this agenda item is simply to determine whether member jurisdictions are comfortable in beginning the environmental review process. And the next slide. And some of this you've already seen. I presented to your city council in January, and some of these slides are pulled from that same presentation. So I'll be quick through them. The goal here is to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions to meet the state targets. The next slide, please. And this slide shows the climate action planning steps, and we're in step number 3, where we've developed an inventory in step 1. We've reached out and communicated to some degree, and then step 3 is to set the goals and to select actions, and this is really going to be kind of an iterative process where we've identified in this draft cap a set of measures that will get us to the state targets, and we've pulled from other climate action plans developed by other jurisdictions throughout the state, and then we've also pulled from our regional plans like the transportation plan and the Redwood Coast Energy Authority's plans, and we've developed the measures that seemed like a pretty good fit for Humboldt County writ large. And now we're going to be evaluating those in the environmental impact report, and then eventually your city council and all of the city councils will be setting the goals by actually adopting the climate action plan. And so that'll complete step 3. And then step 4 is obtaining resources. Some of these measures are going to require funding, and other sources of resources. And so that's what we're going to be doing as soon as we adopt the plan. And then we will be taking action and tracking and reporting, and then doing another iteration of this where we'll do another inventory and see how we did. And the goal here, again, is to meet the state targets, and that's in this next slide. If you could advance that, please. You've seen this slide before. We hit the 2020 targets, and so now we're moving on to hitting the 2030 targets. And with the measures that we've got in this draft climate action plan, we get there. We're just barely over the finish line. But really, that's by design. We don't want to design it so that we're trying to be overachievers. We're just trying to hit the minimum mark here, meet the state target, which is 40% of our GHG emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, below what we were emitting back in 1990. So that's a statewide target. We've incorporated that into our climate action plan as the goal, the immediate goal. But we also are aware, and we are kind of setting ourselves up for a much more aggressive goal in 2045 to hit net zero. And this is another one of these state targets, and it's going to be a heavy lift. We're going to need all hands on deck kind of an approach to get there. And so this climate action plan sets us up to do that. Next slide, please. So we've got the recommended target. I mentioned earlier, 40% below 1990 levels by 2030. Next slide, please. And what this slide shows is the reductions from the highest performing measures in the draft CAP. The CAP is the climate action plan. You can see in the upper right-hand corner of this pie chart, the electrification of existing infrastructure is the most significant chunk of our greenhouse gas emission reductions that are in this climate action plan, this draft climate action plan. And then you can just keep going clockwise around the pie chart, and you'll see zero emission passenger vehicles is another significant chunk of it, and then zero emission freight is another significant chunk, and there's a couple of others that that are identified. Next slide, please. And then here is the high-level timeline. I think this was a part of the previous presentation, and so we've launched the effort in 2018. We developed the inventory, and we created the measures and selected a preliminary set for your consideration and the consideration by all of the jurisdictions. And then we developed that draft plan that's now in front of you. And then from here, we will draft the environmental impact report, and after that's complete, then we'll go through a public hearing process to actually adopt the climate action plan for each local jurisdiction, including Rio Dell. And so that's where we fine tune the document to meet the needs of your community. And the last slide is just simply, what do you think? Are you ready to move forward? I can give you a quick update on the status of all of the other city councils. Blue Lake is meeting just in a couple of minutes. John Ford is handling that one, and as soon as you guys are done with me, I'll jump over to that meeting. And Fortuna has, they didn't say yes or no. They asked some clarifying questions in my presentation to them. Likewise, City of Trinidad didn't say one way or another how they wanted it to go. They kind of left it up to the Board of Supervisors. And the board met today to review it, and they approved our moving, or they authorized us to move forward with it. They have some specific concerns that they want addressed in the climate action plan, and I can go into those in more detail, or I'm sorry, the concerns they want addressed in the EIR and the refined climate action plan. And basically it's in response to the public comment that we got from the Humboldt Prosperity Alliance. The comments developed or submitted by Humboldt Prosperity Alliance really resonated with the board, as they did with many of these other city councils. And so the board specifically asked us to address the concerns that they raised through identifying an alternative that would include point source emissions, for instance, and also address kind of a rural, develop measures that are better fit to the rural lifestyle. And so then the other cities that have reviewed it, City of Arcata, City of Eureka, both of them approved moving forward, and also the City of Ferndale. And so we're just wrapping up this phase of the effort, and I'm hopeful to get your support as well. So I'll hand the mic back over to Kevin, and I'm available to answer any questions you have.
All right, Michael, thank you for once again attending the meeting and giving an update on where we're at with the CAP. If you haven't had a chance to watch the board meeting, or if you did not watch it this afternoon, you may be interested in watching that portion of the board meeting. It was about an hour and 45 minutes where they went over a number of points, and Michael mentioned them. One was industrial point sources, carbon sequestration, rural living, and there was a couple more. But I did provide your council with an email the other day with the Humboldt Prosperity Alliance's comments. Basically, they were those comments, and they will be addressed as directed by the board in the EIR, and will be actually pointed out as options or alternatives, and then the final cap will either reflect them or they won't. So with that, what we're looking for tonight, do we have any objection with moving on to preparing the environmental impact report for the climate action plan?
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor Grimes. Kevin, Max, I read with great interest the presentation by Humboldt Prosperity Alliance. And I thought they made some absolutely excellent points that you all need to consider. Starting right off with, what was the industry in Humboldt County in 1990? And it seems like we're really missing the game here when we don't include the pulp mills that existed on Humboldt Bay. I mean, they were huge polluters. And I think the bar is being set arbitrarily way too high by not including them, as you rightfully should. I think you're doing a great disservice to all of the people in Humboldt County by willfully taking that out of the equation. And their other points were equally well made, and all of them need to be strongly considered in any EIR presentation. Thank you, Mayor Grimes.
Thank you. Councilmember Carter?
Gordon beat me to it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gordon, for going first. No, nothing further.
Okay. Councilmember Wilson?
I agree with Amanda, to Mr. Johnson. The fact that to remove the pulp mills from the equation is, in one way, addresses some of in my opinion, the way that they're addressing the climate change problem. It's not being addressed. It's, I believe a lot of this is just facial talk, it's putting out something to say something to make it sound good. But as far as doing something substantial to solve the problem with both, I don't know so much about the county, but I can say state and nationwide, it's not being solved. To push the idea of getting away from emissions from your cars and going over the batteries, what you're gonna have to acquire from nations that are biggest source of the lithium battery was Afghanistan, and we're not able to access that quantity. And then how do we go about charging those batteries? And so that part seems to just fix one thing and create another problem, just like we talked about earlier on some issues that we have in the city, that we corrected one problem and created another problem. And so, I'm all for doing climate action plans and fixing problems, but substantially, our nation and world as a whole is not addressing the issue. If it's even addressable at this point in time, it may be too late. But I do appreciate Mr. Johnson's point out that to remove something as the pulp mills, as they were such a polluter, if you lived here through the 60s and 70s and 80s, in particular in Eureka, to smell the chlorine that was coming across the bay, depending which way the wind was blowing, to go into rooms that were in the pulp mill that had, there was so much chlorine in the air that the air was it was like looking through a gas pump coming out of a car when you see the gas fumes because they were so powerful. And so the fact that that's not there anymore, Humboldt County is becoming a more pristine place. And that should be given credit in the climate action plan. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. And I too agree, and I think that adding in or premising the Prosperity Network's report to when you're doing the EIR is going to be very important, and I would support moving forward with the EIR, but only if that is taken into consideration and the points applied. Are there any questions from the audience? Are there any hands raised? Any emails? So it technically doesn't say a vote, so how do you want me to handle that?
I think that we should actually ask for a motion, and I apologize for that, for not making the recommendation. A motion to move forward with the EIR, provided that the issues raised in the Humboldt Prosperity Alliance's letter to the Board of Supervisors are addressed and analyzed in the EIR.
So moved. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you for being here, Mike. We appreciate your work and all of everything you've done. Take care.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor Garnes and Kevin and Kyle and the whole crew there. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
All right. Bye-bye. Mhm.
Special call items, page 92 in our packet, public hearing cost recovery for abatement of 483 4th Avenue.
Good evening, Mayor Garnes, members of the City Council. This is a public hearing for cost recovery for the second and third abatements that have been done at 483 4th Avenue. Our recommendations are that you open the public meeting, receive any testimony that's relevant to the abatements that have been done at 483 4th Avenue, close the public meeting, discuss the matter, and approve the findings in order confirming accounts and assessments for the abatement of 483 4th Avenue. And Community Service Officer Mary Clark is here to provide that testimony.
Thank you. Open. You want to say anything? Do you want questions first?
So the first abatement that was completed at the property was in September of 2020. Lien has already been placed on the property for the cost of that abatement. Prior to me being hired, an additional abatement occurred on March 12th of 2021. The cost for that abatement was $790.74. On December 22nd, I and a crew completed the third abatement. The cost for that one was $2,841.30. All of this information has been sent to the property owner. And there has been no attempt in her making a payment plan with the city to pay those costs.
Thank you. Councilman Wilson? Question?
Do I comment on this?
You have a question?
I don't have a question. Probably don't really need to make a comment. This is part of the cost of doing business. Keep our city.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor Grimes. I jogged by 483 4th Avenue a couple days ago. And it looks like they're working on the fourth abatement order right now. Don't they understand that it's gonna cost them? I mean, I figured out that it costs them 20 times as much to get it abated by the city as it does to hire an ecology to haul that stuff away. I know some slow people. But this is beyond that. Hey,
I want to say first, thank you to the city staff who's been working on this, because this has been ongoing and ongoing and ongoing, and I know it's not a fun thing to have to do. Yeah. I also want to say that it makes me sad that when we have to do these things a little bit, just, it's a bummer in general. And so I want to acknowledge that. I like to see humans as human beings, and something's going on down there that I feel bad about. Lastly, long-term, what do we do? Do we just keep abating and abating and abating?
That's the ultimate question.
Yeah, like what happens?
The ultimate question.
I mean, that's fine if that's what we do. I'm just curious. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
We have to
Okay.
keep abating, and
Yes.
we can issue administrative citations.
Yes.
However, that has to get up to a certain amount for us to actually take action on that and take that to small claims court to get that amount.
They don't care about
I
administrative
don't.
citations. No. Okay.
The only other option that we may have open to us is currently, the cost recovery from the first abatement is just a lien on the property.
Mhm.
While I'm not excited about kicking somebody out of their home, there is possible to attach that lien to their property taxes. And they wouldn't be able to pay their property taxes until the lien was paid. In 6 years, the property could be sold in a tax auction. Like I said, I'm not real excited about kicking people out of their homes. They've got nowhere else to go. So, but that is kind of the last option.
Yeah, okay.
The feasibility of continuing to do abatements runs dry.
It's an ethical dilemma, right? Because there's kids there, there's all these animals, well, sometimes there's animals there, sometimes there's not, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, that's why I say I feel sad when something like this pops up, but it's also just horrible to look at, and I really feel for those neighbors down there, so thank you for, I don't even want to know what you saw. Maybe I do, so, I mean, no. And that's it for me, thank you.
Thank you. I thank you for everything you guys have had to put up with and had to do. It is greatly appreciated. It's very, very sad.
Yeah.
And seemingly unnecessary, but it is what it is, I guess, as they say. So, are there any questions, hands raised, emails? No. Then, I will close the public hearing and call for a vote on whether we want to move forward with cost recovery of abatement for 483 4th Avenue. Is that? Okay. Is there a motion?
Mayor Grimes, I would move that we accept the findings and confirm the account of assessments and assess the property owners at 483 Fourth Avenue, the full cost of the abatement.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second, but say once again that I'm sad about it. Okay.
Thank you, and we have a motion and a second. Motion carries 4-0. Now we move to the second reading by title only and adoption of ordinance number 391-2022, amending the city's zoning regulations, chapter 17 of the Rio Dell Municipal Code to be consistent with the California Government Code 65650, state supportive housing law, 65660, low barrier navigation centers law, and 65913.4, state streamlined ministerial approval process by establishing procedures for reviewing ministerial approval applications. Page 99 in our packets.
Mayor Garnes, member of the council, as the mayor indicated, this is just the second reading of the state mandated amendments to our zoning regulations to facilitate the development of certain housing types. A lot of, as presented at your May 17th meeting, a lot of the requirements are actually done. We meet those state mandate deadlines already. And I'm actually proud of that. So again, if you don't have any questions, in order to move along, I would recommend that we adopt ordinance number 391-2022, amending the code to implement those state housing law regulations, and then direct the clerk of the board to publish the post-adoption ordinance with a summary of ordinance as required by section 36993 of the California Government Code. Again, if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. If not, I would open up the public hearing to see if any members of the public have any questions.
Thank you. And thank you for everything you've done to get that done. That was a lot of work, and so we appreciate that for sure. Are there any questions? Councilman Carter, Councilman Wilson? Mayor Pro Tem.
My only question is, was there any comments from the planning commission on this?
On this one, there wasn't. On another one coming up tonight, in a few minutes, there was some suggestions.
Any questions from the audience? Any hands raised or emails? Hearing none, seeing none, I will then call for a motion to accept the second reading and adoption of ordinance number 391-2022.
So moved.
Have a motion and a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second, please vote. Motion carries 4-0. Introduction and first reading by title only of ordinance number 394-2022 and approval of resolution number 1543-2022 related to the extension of Measure J, the 1% transaction and use tax for general purposes. Yeah, so,
Maybe I'll take it from here, Mayor Garnes.
page 117 in our packets.
Page 117. What we'll do is introduce the first reading of the proposed ordinance. We'll open the public hearing, receive any public input. And then what we will do is approve the resolution and continue the item on to the next city council meeting. So the council may recall that Measure J is a full 1% transactions and use tax that was passed by the voters twice. Once when it was originally Measure U and then Measure J. The tax currently is set to expire on December 31st, 2024. The current ordinance before you, which would need to be approved by the council this month and then forwarded on to the Board of Supervisors for approval for placement on the ballot for November, for the November election. proposes to reduce the 1% tax by 25% and make it a 0.75% tax with a termination date determined by the voters. So in reviewing the city's long-term financial projections, where we're at, and given that the city does have some additional new revenue sources coming into it from cannabis, a good portion of that does seem to be a sustainable, stable source of revenue, that there is room to go ahead and reduce the Measure J tax and put that forward for approval of the voters this coming November. So those are basically the major changes to the existing Measure J ordinance. The language in the as proposed currently is shall the city of Rio Dell continue to impose a reduced 0.75% transaction use tax with all the proceeds placed in the city's general fund. And the tax authorized by this ordinance is expected to generate approximately $345,000 annually. And the revenue will continue in effect until repealed by the voters, would be the posed question. So as the council knows, we have been able to, as the council witnessed earlier and approved the budget, cities making very significant investments related to infrastructure, both city discretionary funds and then grant funds that we're able to pull down, most of those without any match requirements. So those investments are heading towards one of the council's consistent priority area projects, which is the infrastructure of the community. And so infrastructure, in this case, primarily roads. And so we do have a construction project currently underway on Riverside. And we have done work on Aloha and various other streets throughout town to both reconstruct the surface, to do asphalt maintenance overlays, and then also to do slurry seals. And we are going to be continuing to do that, as the council outlined approximately $1.8 million plan to remedy many of the streets in town, and we still have a couple of years to go on that, on those outlays. So when you look at it, we have two different primary sources of funding that's going in to subsidize these street projects, and some of that is cannabis, and some of it is TUT. And so, in order to continue these projects going forward, highly recommend that the council approve the ordinance and forward it on to the Board of Supervisors for a vote of the public. Some of the other things we've been able to do over the past few years has been, aside from infrastructure, has been investment in public safety in Rio Dell. The police department has been able to invest in new technologies, new equipment, new staffing levels. So we've increased staffing levels. We have a community services officer. We have an additional officer position that was added to the budget. So we're able to do a lot more in terms of public safety. Obviously, recruitment is going to be an issue moving forward, but the council has been very aggressive in making sure that we are paying as competitive a wage as a small town can. And a big result, a big cause of that has been both cannabis tax revenue and Measure J. So as I mentioned earlier, Measure J has a sustainable funding stream. Certainly we had a ballpark year, as the finance director outlined a couple of years ago. And what we're seeing though is a more sustainable figure around the $200,000 in revenue. We certainly anticipate that will continue to grow as we have additional development projects occurring. And so it seems like the appropriate time to be proposing a tax that is lower than the current one. And so that'll put us in line with Fortuna. I believe Ferndale is exploring the concept of an additional transactions and use tax. And we will be lower than Eureka and possibly Arcade. I don't remember what their exact number was, but with that, if there's any questions or comments, I'm happy to try to answer them and follow the council's pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you very much, City Manager. I do appreciate that we have been able to accomplish a lot with this particular tax. It's been very helpful to the city, to the infrastructure, to the safety, all the things you mentioned. And it is very important to all of those things being able to continue. But I do appreciate the lowering it because we found there's something that can offset some of it. And so that then translates to lesser tax for the citizens. And that's greatly appreciated. Are there any questions, Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor Gines. First off, I want to thank the citizens of Rio Dell for supporting the concept of Measure U, Measure J for close to a decade now. Thank you, voters. And, when we passed the last one, we indicated that we wanted to spend it on streets, public safety, economic development. And as the city manager has outlined, we've done exactly that. We've invested the community's money, what we think is wisely, putting it back into the community. My only question is that if this proposed ballot measure passes, when would the 3/4% go into effect?
So right now it would be designed to go into effect January 1st, 2025.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Wilson?
I don't have a lot of comments other than to thank the staff for proposing to us and the council for accepting prudent measures to spend the money on, which I know for a long time, people have talked about the city had in the past had promised different things that they were going to do with the money that the city gave them. Citizens gave the city and it didn't follow through. In this case, that's been done with the streets and the safety in particular. So hopefully the citizens will continue to support the measure, and I think it's a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Carter?
I'm on board with this. Round thank yous all around. Yeah, good idea. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. And are there any questions, any emails, any hands raised? And I just want to jump on that thanking the citizen bandwagon. I think we all do. I think we are very appreciative of the citizens of Rio Dell being supportive of this and hope they appreciate that we are trying our best to return it to them in ways that make our community better. Is there a motion to accept the first reading of ordinance number 394-2022 and approval of resolution number 1543-2022 related to the extension of Measure J and 1% transaction use tax for general purposes?
So moved.
Have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
And can I, before you vote, can I recommend an amendment to the motion,
Yes.
which is that second section of the motion to just continue the item to June 21st.
Okay. And. So let me just go back.
Not approval of the resolution on the top.
Okay. I got you. Introduction and first reading of ordinance number 394-2022 and to move forward to the June 21st, 2022 meeting for the approval of resolution 1543-2022. Is that
I would say.
Okay, and we have a second. That motion carries 4-0. On to item 3, adopt resolution number 1540-2022, vacating the Caltrans give back parcel located south of Painter Street, east of Ireland Avenue, north of Center Street, and west of Highway 101, page 126 in our packets.
So Mayor Garner, members of council, as was reported at our last meeting of May 17th, there's a process where we actually have to provide set a public hearing, which we did at the May 17th City Council meeting, post on site a public notice, and we also notified everybody within 300 feet of the property of the city's intent to vacate that portion of that Caltrans give back right away for the development of a dog park, which again is another 100% grant funded project. So at this meeting, we recommend you adopt resolution 1540-2022, vacating that. And then once this resolution is approved, adopted, and signed, we would send the resolution to the county recorder. The county recorder would record it. Once it's recorded, that is vacated technically and legally. And then we need to notify proponents, actually, the folks that are administering the Clean California grant. Is it Clean California grant, City Manager?
Yeah, no, that is
That's a property
parks, yeah.
property grant, and let them know that we've actually vacated it and that we can move forward in developing that dog park. So with that, if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. We are basically following protocols established in Streets and Highways Code. I did not get any phone calls from anybody. I did receive a late notice from PG&E yesterday, actually, that there was a power pole in the southwest corner of the property, and they want to reserve an easement to that power pole. And you should have had on your desk a supplemental item, which includes the language they recommended, and then an amended resolution incorporating that language. And then again, I'm happy to answer any questions you or the community may have.
And so, with the amended resolution here,
Yes. It's attached and that's supplemental.
just the, after
Yeah, it's the, I guess it's the third page. The first page is the cover letter. The
Right.
second page is the letter from PG&E,
the, okay, now therefore be resolved.
and then the amended resolution.
Reserving.
Yeah, will be the third page.
Are there any questions, Councilmember Carter?
I'm really excited about this. This is wonderful. With PG&E having a pole and they have an easement, is that what this says?
Yeah, they have the right to basically replace, repair, maintain that power pole.
Does it mean the city can't maintain, like sometimes when it's not city property and it's Caltrans or it's PG&E, we can't.
It is city property. They would have a right to repair and maintain.
Thank you for that clarification. Okay, that's that. The other report says that you received 2 phone calls as a result of the notice.
I did, actually.
I'm just curious. I love this idea and I'm gonna say yay.
Yeah,
I'm just
I did
curious.
receive 2 phone calls, actually, both of them from neighbors as a result. One is actually walking their dog. How ironic, they're walking their dog at the future dog park. And then the other one's a neighbor that got the notice, the direct mail notice. And both of them just wanted to show support
Yes.
for the proposed dog park. I'm glad to see the city's actually following through with what we've talked about for years.
Yay, positive phone calls.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Wilson?
No, I think somebody else asked or comment on that. It's included this part we wrote into the resolution, so the PG&E is covered.
Yes.
And that's fine. Thanks.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
No comment.
And I have none, just yay,
Mhm.
excited about it. And I'm getting a puppy on the 12th, so I'm super excited about it. So, okay, are there any hand raised, any questions, any emails? No, okay, so is there a motion to adopt resolution number 1540-2022, vacating the Caltrans give back parcel reserving pursuant to provisions of section 8340 of the Streets and Highway Code for the benefit of PG&E Company for a permanent easement and right at any time and from time to time to excavate for construction, reconstruct, replace, or any initial or other size, maintain, remove, inspect, and use public facilities, including but not limited to electric, gas, and communication facilities, including ingress and egress from the public utilities facility, and also the right to trim and cut down trees and other vegetation that might be a hazard to the public utilities facilities. And the area shall be kept open and free of building structures, wells, or other obstructions. Is there a motion?
Sounded.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Motion carries 4-0.
But if I may through the mayor, that is typical boilerplate language from PG&E. It applies to all the reasons.
Thank you.
It's your baby business.
And finally, we have the introduction and first reading by title only of ordinance number 393-2022 and approval of resolution number 1542-2022, amending the land use. I think that's going to end up being move forward, the resolution number 1542-2022, amending the land use and housing element and the city zoning regulations, chapter 17 of the Rio Dell Municipal Code. Page 32 on our packet.
Mayor Garnes, members of the council, it does start on page 132 of your packet. Probably the easiest way to, if the council is interested in looking at this, is starts on page 139, which is a copy of the draft ordinance. It basically includes amending the Rio Dell Municipal Code to incorporate the definitions of supportive housing, emergency shelters, and low area navigation centers. We currently do not have those definitions within the municipal code. And then if we look at page 142, that's where we begin start to amending the certain land use designations. The residential multifamily zone, subsection E, where navigation centers are now identified as a principal permitted use. And then we go to the town center zone, and we talk about emergency shelters, supportive and additional housing projects, and low barrier navigation centers on the upper floors of multi-story buildings. And that would be the same for the neighborhood commercial zone and the community commercial zone. So those are the zoning text amendments that are identified in ordinance number 393/2022. And this would be the introduction and first reading of those items. The second element of the project is the text amendments to the housing element and to the land use element. And those are actually approved by resolutions. And those resolutions only require one reading and one approval when you're amending the general plan. And so those start on page 146 of your packet. And right there is the land use designations for the residential multifamily zone. Again, we're including the low area navigation centers. And then we go to the town center zone, where we include the emergency shelters, supportive housing, transitional housing projects, and low area navigation centers. We're also identifying the density. Right now, for some reason, the current general plan did not identify residential density for these zones. As council is aware, mixed uses are allowed, residential units on the upper floor of commercial buildings. And we're recommending a density of 20 units per acre. And that would be the same for the neighborhood center and for the community commercial designations as well, which are identified in page 147. And I do want to comment that we actually got a written comment from Caltrans, very supportive of our changes, identifying these densities. As the council is aware, there's a big movement in the planning world to be supportive of mixed housing projects and at higher densities than normal. Typically, you see maybe 15 units per acre. It doesn't mean that somebody is going to come in and build 20 units per acre, but they could if they wanted to in this land use designation. It also helps in what's called vehicle miles traveled. It's a CEQA analysis that you have to do for projects that are subject to CEQA. And it helps people to basically live and work in close proximity to one another. As far as the amendments to the housing element itself, it starts on page 148. Table 27 identifies the residential densities. And what we did is we clarified the rural designation. It said less than one. We actually made it specific 0.20, which is 1 unit plus an ADU per 5 acres in that rural designation. And then you see down at the bottom where we've cleaned up the town center, the community commercial and neighborhood center designations to allow up to 20 units per acre, which we believe would accommodate lower and moderate incomes households. And then on page 149 of your packet, which is table 29 of the housing element, is our vacant residential site inventory. We included the top property, expecting some residential development on there. For some reason, we did not include that originally. 10 acres, we had hoped that there's a possibility of developing up to 55 units of very low or low income housing there. And then on 7.8 acres, you're looking hopefully maybe 40 units one day for moderate type housing. The one recommendation that and there are a couple actually too. If we look at the bottom, there are 2 parcels up on Grayland Heights that were recently brought to our attention. I didn't realize that there were some parcels up there, undeveloped parcels, until we actually got a call from a neighbor because there was some probably brush clearing activity that was occurring up there. And then when we pulled the accessory parcel map out, I realized there were 2 parcels there and they were not included in our list of available sites for ultimate more residential development. So we included those as items number 19 and 20. And the planning commission did suggest, if you look at items 1 and 2, actually even 4, 3, 4, and 5, the housing element table 29 did not include an address or a street. So the planning commission wanted to know where those were and suggested that we actually include that street where they were located. So geographically, members of the community, members of the council, members of the commission can get an idea on where those sites are actually located. With that, I would ask the council continue the second reading to the meeting of June 21st, for approval and adoption of the text amendments to the municipal code, and then approve resolution 1542-2022, making those amendments to the housing element and the land use element as described a minute ago. Again, if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
No questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Wilson.
The spot on the law, is that the big vacant lot there?
Yes, the Dodgy parcel.
Dodgy lot, yeah. So that's included in the housing element that it is.
That we hope for some.
Because you're moving these things into this neighborhood commercial.
Yeah, and they're allowed to have again apartments on the second floor.
Second.
Yes. It would still have to be commercial on the first floor.
Thank you, that's all my comment.
Thank you. Councilmember Carter.
No questions. Thank you.
I have no questions. Thank you for all of this, and I do appreciate the street names being in there. That was a good suggestion. Gives you a little bit better visual. Are there any hands raised, emails, questions? Hearing none, I will ask for a motion to accept the first reading of ordinance number 393-2022 and move it forward to June 21st for the second reading. And a motion for the approval, same motion, approval of resolution number 1542-2022, amending the land use and housing element and the city's zoning regulations.
So moved.
We have a motion, is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Motion carries 4-0. Now we move to council reports and communications, Mayor Pro Tem. I have no report. Councilmember Carter.
I'm shocked. What? Let's see, I went to the chamber meeting this past Friday. Good stuff happened in there. I don't know if anybody's seen Jim Brinkley down here pressure washing. It's green building on the site, so they're moving forward with a mural project, which should brighten up that part of town and that part of Wildwood Avenue, so I'm excited about that. And then we're working on putting in the kiosks that we talked about, so many days ago. But those are gonna get installed, and then I just also wanted to comment on how nice the flags look for Memorial Day. And people were out there at 5 a.m. putting those things up, and thank you for helping with the holes that the poles go into. It looked really nice, and if you go on the city's Instagram page, I got a real nice video driving down the street of all the flags up, so. Anyway, that's it for me, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Wilson.
Yeah, I think I mentioned last time I'd gone to the RCEA meeting. I don't think I was, there's one coming up, or HWMA Thursday, but the RCEA thing had this, I think if I mentioned before, if I'm not, I'll mention it here. They're trying to change the net metering law and criteria for that, for having solar panels on their roof, or how you get reimbursed when you put money back into the grid. They're trying to, the state is trying to seemingly take away from the residents and gone to that trouble because they're, the theory is that the lower income people are subsidizing the higher income people who can afford to have a solar panel. So it's a counterproductive thing. So stay tuned to that when you get the chance. You'll hear that as it goes forward. The other thing I had was a question for the city manager. I should have asked probably during report. The sculpture that we had down there, the last time we mentioned the owl got sold, but the tree's still there. Is that going to remain here, the tree, or what is, we're stuck with a tree that has nothing on it? I mean,
There's an eagle.
I thought there was an
There is
eagle.
something on it.
Last time I looked, there was an eagle
Yeah.
perched where the owl was.
Yes.
okay, I just didn't see it like going to.
But yeah, I'll have to get the end date on the contract, but once that expires, it becomes city property. So the trunk and the eagle.
Do all the sculptures after a certain date become the city property?
Yes, I believe the time period was 5 years. And I'd have to look at the documentation again to figure out, but it's probably coming up for that particular one. It's probably coming up. I don't know if Kevin has any.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I think it's got to be getting close.
Yeah.
I think it's probably from this next year. I can certainly look into that, get the information to the city manager, get back to your council.
What's that?
I can get that information to the city manager and he can provide that information to your council.
That's all I have.
Thank you, and I have nothing to report. I want to thank staff. There was a lot of stuff on this agenda, and that was a lot of staff work that was involved in all of those pages. And thank you all for everything you've done. Well done. And I also want to thank the chamber and for the display was beautiful. It was lovely. Someone asked me if they could stay up longer, but I appreciate everyone's energy on that. It was beautiful. It made us look really good, right up there with Ferndale.
I thought the same thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're getting there. So anyway, 10 minutes, if you haven't voted and you're listening, run to the poll. You have 10 minutes. Thank you, everybody. Meeting adjourned and their motions. We have a motion, we have a second. Meeting adjourned until June 21st.